Hello, my gardening friends, and welcome back to our shared space, where we grow not just plants, but beautiful memories and healthier lives. Have you ever stood in your garden on a quiet spring morning holding a bottle of chemical bug spray and wondered if there might be a kinder and better way to protect the vegetables you pour so much love into? Have you ever watched the pests return week after week despite all your efforts, and felt a sudden wave of exhaustion? There is a $9 billion industry that relies entirely on you never discovering the secret I am about to share with you today. Every single spring, roughly 80% of American households walk into their local garden centers to buy synthetic chemicals to spray on their precious food. We have been doing this for decades, in a never-ending cycle, where the pests arrive, we spray, they return, and we spray again. Meanwhile, the companies selling these temporary fixes make another $3 billion in the United States alone. But just 300 miles west of Manhattan, tucked away in the beautiful rolling farmlands of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, there is a peaceful community of over 44,000 Amish people who have been growing thriving abundant food for more than 300 years without ever purchasing a single bottle of synthetic pesticide. Not even one. And their gardens do not just survive, my friends, they absolutely flourish. Their tomato plants grow taller and fuller. Their squash vines remain incredibly clean. The damage they see from pests is just a tiny fraction of what the rest of us struggle with season after season. I remember standing in one of those magnificent gardens a few years ago, gazing at row after row of vibrant peppers without a single aphid in sight, and I asked myself, what profound truth have these gentle people figured out that the rest of us are still paying good money to avoid learning? Today, we are going to explore exactly what these Amish gardeners do differently, and how you can easily bring these time-honored practices into your own backyard. The first principle is understanding the true nature of plant health and the remarkable story of a young man named John Kemp. To truly appreciate this, we have to look back to the 1940s, right after the Second World War, when the modern pesticide industry was born. Chemical companies needed new commercial markets for the synthetic compounds they had created for the war effort. So industrial chemicals were repurposed from warfare to our agricultural fields almost overnight. The business model was never designed to solve your pest problems permanently, because a product that completely eliminates the need for itself would be a terrible business. So for 80 years, we have been locked into this exhausting cycle. But the Amish simply watched and shook their heads, because they knew something that modern peer-reviewed science is only just now starting to prove. You do not defeat garden pests by trying to kill them all. You defeat them by building a garden environment where they simply cannot survive. This single beautiful shift in thinking is worth more than every bottle sitting on the shelves of your local store. The story that opened my eyes to this is about an Amish boy named John Kemp, who only had an 8th grade education. John grew up on a small family farm in Ohio, where his father actually supplied pesticides to the region. They sprayed more chemicals than anyone else around them. And yet, for 3 consecutive years, they lost up to 70% of their primary crops to insects and disease. Nothing in a bottle could save their harvest. But then they rented a neighboring field from a dairy farmer. This particular field had never been touched by pesticides and was simply rotated with corn grains and hay. They planted cantaloupe across both the heavily sprayed family soil and the untreated dairy soil. When harvest time arrived, 80% of the leaves on the chemically treated side were covered in disease, while the untreated side had 0 infection. Absolutely none. You could see a sharp line right down the middle of the field, dividing the ruined plants from the perfectly healthy ones. This inspired young John to walk into his local public library and spend 2 years reading advanced university textbooks on biology and plant chemistry. He discovered something truly staggering that completely changes how we look at our gardens. Plants have a literal immune system, just like we do. When a plant receives the right balance of minerals from the soil, like iron, manganese, copper, zinc, and nitrogen, it achieves complete photosynthesis. This allows the plant to convert all of its soluble nitrates into complete proteins. And here is the miraculous part that will change your gardening life forever. Common pests like caterpillars, hornworms, and aphids feed exclusively on soluble nitrates. Their simple digestive systems literally cannot process complete proteins. So when your plant is truly healthy and full of complete proteins, an insect will land on it. Try to take a bite, find absolutely nothing it can digest, and simply fly away hungry. The plant defends itself naturally by being far too healthy to be eaten. It happens at the microscopic level and can take effect in just 24 to 48 hours once the right minerals are present. The second essential principle is building your garden soil because, as we have slowly learned over the years, soil health and pest control are exactly the same topic. The science has finally caught up to what the Amish have understood through 300 years of quiet observation. The soil is not just dirt where your plant lives, it is the actual immune system of the plant itself. So here is your first actionable step, and it forms the foundation everything else will build upon. Every spring, before you gently place a single transplant into the earth, spread 2 to 3 inches of well-aged compost across your garden beds and work it deeply into the top 4 to 6 inches of the soil. If you can find compost that includes aged horse or cow manure, that is even more wonderful. That rich combination of plant matter and animal waste creates a beautifully diverse soil microbiome. The Amish do not waste their hard-earned money on bags of synthetic fertilizer. They build their soil with compost cover crops and animal manure, doing this on the exact same plots of land for generations. The true secret here is consistency, my friends. One single application will not magically transform your garden overnight. But after 2 or 3 loving seasons of building your soil biology in this natural way, you will notice something truly remarkable. Your plants will develop thicker stems, darker green leaves, and they will bounce back from minor pest nibbles much faster than they ever used to. If you live in a cooler growing area, say zones 3 through 5, try to get your compost down as early as the ground is workable, ideally 3 to 4 weeks before your last spring frost date. In warmer areas like zones 7 through 9, you can start this joyful process in late winter. Please remember that weak soil grows weak plants, and weak plants are essentially a glowing dinner invitation for every single pest in your neighborhood. The third brilliant principle is where the Amish approach looks radically different from anything you see in a conventional American garden. Most of us were taught to plant our gardens in neat single-crop rows. We put all the tomatoes here, the beans over there, and the squash way over on that side. It looks very organized, and it certainly makes harvesting much simpler for our aging knees and backs. But to a hungry insect, a long, solid row of just one crop is a wide-open highway, with neon signs and absolutely no speed limit. Amish gardeners do the exact opposite by mixing everything up on purpose. They tuck aromatic herbs and strong-smelling flowers directly among their precious vegetables. The reasoning behind this is so elegant and simple. Most garden pests find their target plants entirely by smell. Aphids, cabbage moths, tomato hornworms, and cucumber beetles all navigate by following the specific chemical signals that their host plants release into the air. When you lovingly surround those host plants with strong-smelling companions, you create a protective barrier that entomologists call olfactory confusion. The pest literally cannot find your tomatoes because the basil, the marigolds, and the dill are completely drowning out the signal. It is exactly like trying to hear someone whisper your name in a massive stadium full of screaming fans. Here is exactly how you can set this up in your own garden this season. For every 3 to 4 tomato plants, tuck in one basil plant, about 8 to 10 inches away from the base. Basil naturally repels aphids, whiteflies, and tomato hornworms, and as a lovely bonus, many older gardeners swear, it actually improves the flavor of the tomatoes as they grow. The Amish have planted these two friends together for generations. Between your rows of cabbage broccoli or kale, try planting dill or cilantro every 12 to 14 inches. These beautiful herbs repel cabbage moths and imported cabbage worms. But here is the double benefit that makes this so incredibly clever. When the dill and cilantro finally bloom, their tiny, delicate flowers attract parasitic wasps and hoverflies, which are voracious natural predators of aphids and caterpillars. So you are peacefully repelling one set of pests while naturally recruiting their worst enemies at the very same time. The fourth wonderful secret involves the borders of your garden beds and understanding the true nature of the insects living there. Around the edges of your beds, try planting beautiful French marigolds. We do not mean the giant pom-pom African types, but the charming smaller French varieties spaced about 10 to 12 inches apart. Their delicate roots release a natural compound deep into the soil that actively suppresses harmful root knot nematodes, and their distinct scent above ground beautifully deters whiteflies and squash bugs. Multiple agricultural universities have rigorously confirmed this in controlled studies. It is not just old-fashioned tradition for the sake of tradition. It is brilliant science, perfected by centuries of quiet practice. Now, the Amish understand something profound about garden insects that honestly took me decades to learn, and it flipped my entire approach upside down. A truly healthy garden is never a garden with absolutely no insects in it. A healthy garden is simply one filled with the right kinds of insects. Think about this miraculous balance for a moment. A single tiny ladybug can eat up to 50 aphids in just one single day. One tiny lacewing larva can consume 200 aphids in its short, busy lifetime. Parasitic wasps gently lay their eggs inside destructive hornworms and cabbage worms, completely stopping them in their tracks. Ground beetles tirelessly patrol the dark soil surface at night, hunting for slugs, cutworms, and grubs while you are peacefully sleeping. These tiny creatures are not just helpful little visitors, they are your unpaid round-the-clock pest control team. And the Amish specifically build their beloved gardens to keep them permanently employed. The simplest and most beautiful way you can do this is by creating what we call an insect strip. This is just a small section of your garden, perhaps even a simple row 2 feet wide, along one sunny border, planted very densely with flowers and herbs that these beneficial insects desperately need for sweet nectar and pollen. You can plant lovely sweet alyssum right at the front, because it stays low to the ground and blooms all season long, bringing joy to your eyes and food to the bees. Right behind it, try alternating yarrow and dill about 10 to 12 inches apart. If you happen to have a little more room, you can add tall, feathery fennel at the very back. The crucial key here is providing a continuous cycle of blooming flowers from early spring all the way through the crisp days of fall, so your beneficial friends always have a delicious reason to stay close by. Within just a few short weeks of those first delicate flowers, opening that little strip of land will be happily buzzing with hoverflies, parasitic wasps, lacewings, and ladybugs. And once those helpful populations establish their homes there, they will joyfully patrol your entire garden space for you. The Amish also do something that might look a bit untidy to modern eyes, but it is incredibly important. They intentionally leave small patches of their property completely wild. A little patch of soft clover near the garden edge, an unmowed grassy strip running along the old wooden fence, or a simple pile of smooth stones where ground beetles can safely hide from the hot midday sun. These are never signs of laziness, my friends. They are essential life-saving habitats. Every single beneficial insect needs a safe place to live, breed, and survive the cold winter months. If your garden is perfectly manicured and swept clean with bare exposed soil between every single row, you have essentially hung a massive no-vacancy sign for the very creatures you desperately want working for you. Please, let me share a humbling mistake I made early on, so you do not have to repeat it. During my first year trying this natural method, I bought a little bag of live ladybugs, released them all one hopeful evening, and by the very next morning, they were completely gone. Every single one had flown away. You absolutely must give them a reason to stay. Plant the blooming habitat first, and only then invite your tiny guests to the party. The fifth profound practice is one that feels the most beautifully old-fashioned, and that is precisely why it works better than anything you could ever buy in a plastic bottle. Every Amish gardener I have ever spoken with in Lancaster County talks about their peaceful morning walk like it is as natural and essential as eating breakfast. It is not overly complicated, and it is certainly not dramatic, but it just might be the single most effective pest control habit you can build into your daily life. Every single morning, you just take a gentle stroll through your garden for 15 to 20 quiet minutes. You bring along a small bucket half filled with warm water and a little squirt of gentle dish soap. You start right at one end and slowly work your way through every row. You are not just admiring your growing plants. You are gently turning over leaves, checking the hidden undersides of squash foliage, and carefully running your seasoned eyes along every green stem. And when you inevitably find a pest, you simply pick it off by hand and drop it right into your soapy bucket. I know it sounds almost ridiculously simple, but here is exactly why it matters so much to the long-term survival of your crops. Most catastrophic garden damage does not happen because of one or two stray bugs. It happens because a small hidden population was allowed to explode completely unchecked. A single hungry tomato hornworm can strip an entire beautiful branch in just 48 hours. A pair of sneaky squash bugs can lay hundreds of eggs in a single week. By the time you finally notice the terrible damage and run to the shed for a spray bottle, you are already 3 steps behind. The peaceful Amish morning walk catches little problems, while they are still just little problems, and not heartbreaking disasters. Finding 2 hornworms on a Monday morning becomes 0 hornworms on a Monday, instead of waking up to 20 destructive hornworms by Friday. After doing this gentle routine for a couple of seasons, I can honestly tell you, it becomes completely second nature. It is 15 minutes of pure, quiet meditation before the busy day gets going, and it keeps you intimately connected to what is actually happening in your beloved garden in a deeply personal way that no amount of chemical intervention ever could. You slowly develop an experienced eye for what is normal and what is not. You intimately learn the natural rhythms of your plants, and you catch things early, which is truly 90% of the entire battle. The 6th brilliant technique is one of my absolute favorites because it is clever in a way that simply makes you smile once you understand the gentle logic behind it. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to keep every single pest away from your beloved garden, the Amish sometimes invite them in on purpose and then quietly send them to the wrong address. This fascinating method is called trap cropping. You deliberately plant something the pest loves even more than your main crop. and you place it out on the edges, where it safely draws them away from the tender vegetables you actually care about harvesting. Nasturtiums are the perfect classic example of this. Aphids are wildly attracted to the bright, cheerful nasturtiums far more than they are to your precious beans or peppers. If you plant them in a charming ring around the outside of your garden, or at the ends of your rows, about 6 to 8 inches apart, the aphids will excitedly cluster on the nasturtiums and largely leave your main vegetable crops entirely alone. Once those nasturtiums are loaded with tiny aphids, you have 2 easy choices. You can gently pull the plants and dispose of them. Or even better, you can simply leave them there and let the hungry ladybugs and lacewings from your beautiful insectary strip come over and feast. You have just effortlessly created a self-sustaining natural cycle. The trap crop attracts the pests while the beneficial insects find their dinner, and your beautiful vegetables sit happily in the middle, completely untouched. Think about that wonderful peace of mind for a second. You did not have to fight anything at all. You did not have to buy any expensive chemicals. You did not have to spray anything. You simply arranged living things in a clever pattern, and the pest problem quietly solved itself. For flea beetles, which can be an absolute nightmare on young eggplants and fragile brassicas, you can easily plant a row of peppery radishes as a trap crop, about 2 feet in front of your main planting. Flea beetles vastly prefer radish leaves and will happily congregate right there. You just sacrifice the green radish tops, and your prized eggplants stay perfectly clean and healthy. Blue Hubbard squash is another legendary trap crop that older generations swear by. If you love growing any kind of squash or pumpkin, simply planting a couple of Blue Hubbard plants at the far distant corners of your garden will magnetically draw those destructive squash vine borers and cucumber beetles far away from your main harvest. You are not trying to save the Blue Hubbard at all. You are just smartly using it as a living decoy. The true beauty of trap cropping is that it requires no sprays, no synthetic products, and absolutely no daily physical labor beyond what you are already doing on your peaceful morning walk. The 7th traditional practice is for those unpredictable times when the pest pressure feels heavier than usual, or when you have a specific little problem that needs some direct, careful attention. For these moments, the Amish lovingly rely on homemade deterrent sprays made from simple, wholesome ingredients they already have, sitting right in their warm farm kitchens. Here is the exact recipe I learned from a wonderfully kind Amish family in Lancaster County. And it is the one reliable remedy I keep coming back to, because it truly works, and takes only about 10 minutes of your time to prepare. You simply take 4 to 5 fresh cloves of garlic and 2 hot peppers. Cayenne works perfectly, but honestly, any hot pepper you have on hand will do just fine. You carefully chop them up and add them to 1 quart of warm water, letting the fragrant mixture steep overnight for at least 12 hours. The very next morning, you gently strain it through a piece of simple cheesecloth into a clean spray bottle and add exactly 1 teaspoon of plain liquid dish soap. Please make sure it is just simple dish soap and not a harsh detergent. That little bit of soap beautifully helps the spray stick to the plant leaves and also naturally breaks down the waxy coating on soft-bodied insects like those stubborn aphids. You can spray this homemade mixture directly on the affected plants, always making sure to focus on the hidden undersides of the leaves, where most pests like to hide out of sight. It is best to apply this early in the quiet morning or late in the cool evening. You should never spray this in the direct midday sun, because the soap can cause minor leaf burn when the heat is too intense. 1 single application usually keeps pests completely at bay for 5 to 7 days, and you simply reapply it after a heavy summer rain. Now, I want to be completely honest with you, my friends. This natural spray does not kill pests instantly on contact, the way a harsh synthetic chemical does. It simply deters them. It makes your precious plants smell and taste quite unpleasant to the bugs, so the pests simply pack up and move on to easier targets. When you combine this gentle spray with the healthy soil, the companion planting the beneficial insects, and your daily morning monitoring that we have already talked about it, is almost always more than enough to keep your garden thriving peacefully. The eighth profound shift in our thinking is understanding that all of these gentle practices are part of a beautifully connected living system, and not just a standalone product. The pesticide industry wants you to believe that one magic bottle can solve all your problems, but the Amish know it takes an entire system working gracefully together. Let me gently walk you through some old habits that many of us used to follow religiously, and there is absolutely no judgment here because we all did our best with the information we had. The first old habit is reaching for a spray bottle at the very first sign of a tiny bug. Most of us were taught that any pest presence means you have a terrible problem. But when the Amish see a few aphids, they do not panic at all. They know the helpful ladybugs are already on their way. A small pest population is actually a vital food source for your beneficial insects. If you spray those few aphids away, you have accidentally removed the only food source that keeps your predator population alive, and you have just fired your entire unpaid pest control team. The second old habit is planting in those neat monoculture rows we talked about earlier. We did this for years because it looked so nice and organized, but a long row of nothing but cabbage is simply a brightly lit runway for hungry cabbage moths. The third habit is keeping the garden just a little too perfectly clean. Bare soil might look tidy to our eyes, but it eliminates the safe homes for ground beetles and spiders. Just a thin layer of straw mulch, or a soft strip of clover, gives those wonderful allies somewhere comfortable to live. The fourth, and perhaps the biggest habit, is treating pest control and soil health as two completely separate chores. The Amish taught me they are the exact same conversation. When you build the soil, you build the powerful immune system of the plant, and the pest problem quietly solves itself from the inside out. The ninth, and perhaps the most brilliantly simple secret I learned from an Amish family, is something I have never seen mentioned in any modern gardening book or television show. It is one of those ideas that seems almost too simple until you try it and realize it completely solves a heartbreaking problem you have been losing sleep over for years. When the Amish transplant their tender young seedlings into the garden in the spring, they gently place a protective collar made from a simple cardboard tube around the base of each precious plant. They simply push it about 1 inch deep into the soft soil and leave about 2 inches rising safely above the surface. They use old toilet paper rolls or paper towel rolls thoughtfully cut into shorter pieces. That is the entire technique, my friends. This humble cardboard collar does two brilliant things to protect your hard work. First, it creates an absolute physical barrier against cutworms. Cutworms are those sneaky larvae that crawl along the soil's surface in the dark of night and chew clean through the stems of your young transplants. Most gardeners do not even know cutworms are the real reason they lose their seedlings because the terrible damage happens while we sleep. The collar stops them completely because they cannot climb over it and they cannot chew through it. Second, and this is the part that is elegantly perfect, the cardboard completely breaks down naturally in the damp soil over 4 to 6 weeks. That is precisely the exact window of time it takes for the plant stem to harden to the point where cutworms can no longer bite through it. The beautiful protection arrives exactly when the tiny plant needs it the most, and naturally dissolves when the plant is finally strong enough to stand on its own. It costs $0, uses absolutely no plastic, involves no harsh chemicals, and takes only about 5 minutes of your time. The ultimate lesson that beautifully ties all of this together is captured in an old German word that runs deep through every aspect of Amish life. That word is Gelassenheit. It does not translate perfectly into English, but the closest and most beautiful meaning is yielding to the natural order. It means gracefully surrendering the stressful need to control every single little thing, and trusting that nature already has a perfect balance built right into it. It is not about being passive, it is about being a loving, respectful partner with your garden. When you spray a pesticide, you are forcefully overriding that beautiful system. The Amish simply set the table and let nature eat. They build the soil, they plant sweet-smelling companions, they create safe habitats, and they peacefully walk their gardens every morning. This is not just a collection of random techniques, it is a deeply respectful philosophy that has been working on the exact same land for the exact same families for over 3 centuries. So here is exactly what I lovingly hope you will take away from our time today. Please build your soil every single year with rich compost and aged organic matter. Plant those beautiful companions that confuse pests and naturally attract their enemies. Create a safe habitat for the beneficial insects that do the hard work while you are peacefully sleeping. Walk your garden every morning and catch little problems while they are still small. Use clever trap crops to gently redirect pests away from what really matters. And when you need a little natural boost, mix up that simple garlic and pepper spray that safely deters without wiping out the whole living system. Please try the simple cardboard collar on your fragile transplants this spring. It costs absolutely nothing. It takes only 5 minutes, and it just might be the single most satisfying change you make in your beloved garden this entire year. The Amish have been doing this beautifully for 3 centuries, and the science now perfectly confirms why it works. The only thing missing now is you giving it a try. And honestly, once you start seeing the wonderful results, once you actually watch a tiny ladybug devour 50 aphids in a single quiet afternoon, once you see your own tomato plant standing tall and vibrantly green in late August, while your neighbor's plants are sadly yellowing and chewed, you will truly wonder why anyone ever convinced us there was a better way hiding inside a chemical bottle. If any of this changed how you think about your garden, please leave a comment below and tell me exactly what you are going to try first. I promise, I read every single one. And if you found this fascinating, please hit subscribe for more heartfelt stories exactly like this. I have deep dives coming soon on how traditional cultures around the world respectfully approach everything from natural soil building to ancient seed saving. And trust me, there are so many more beautiful secrets like this just waiting to be uncovered. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me today, and I will gladly see you in the next video.